All right, hopefully you've picked up your cup with your spring and like a paper clip. And what you will need to have at home is some place where you can kind of just hang your cup off of, and that can be anything. If you want, use another paper clip or something to kind of rig it up, but you just need to have it so that it hangs. And then you'll need to find a ruler, something that you can measure a distance with. Because what we're looking to do is we're going to see how much of a stretch this gets based on putting some mass in it. So like I currently am going to use this point right here to kind of measure my 0 mark. So my 0 mark looks to be right about at that 4 centimeter mark. And so that's going to be my 0 mark on a graph. And then what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to add some mass to it. Now, I'm going to use pennies. You want to find something that's just uniform so that it's an easy thing that you can kind of Google and find the mass of. If you have a kitchen scale at home, you can use that to kind of make a mass measurement. But I just Googled quick and found out that a penny is about 0.25 grams, and I'm going to add 20 of them. Okay, so I'm adding some mass to this. And what happens is the F of G now is bigger, so it's pulling it down, which means that this spring is going to stretch. So now I go back and I read again from my same point, and you can see that now it's dropped a little bit. So that's going to be my first point, and then I'll just add more pennies and continue collecting my data in this way. All right, so you've collected your data. Now you got to go through and set yourself up with a spreadsheet. So I'm just going to kind of walk through this. You've got, I just opened up a brand new spreadsheet. You probably want to title it something so that you can find it again. I'm going to call it Hooke's Law. Okay. And then I'm going to go through and we're going to create a table. So similar to the table that's on the lab sheet, we're going to do our displacement. And that displacement is going to be measured in meters. And then we're going to put our force, and that's going to be measured in newtons. Okay. And so we're set up now. So we've got our displacement, so we've got our forces. Remember, we did start with 0 displacement and 0 force. We want those to be included as points. And then I'm just going to go in and I'm going to throw in some numbers that might be similar. 3. And I am trying to do these converted into meters. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and I'm going to throw in those corresponding forces. And again, these are going to be converted into newtons. Oh, I forgot to change all those into newtons. So 0.5 and 1, 1.5, 2, and 2.5. So I've got my force in newtons, and I've got my displacement in meters. And I'm just going to go ahead and create a graph out of this. So again, we're creating a scatter plot, so it's just going to be an insert, a chart. I highlighted all my data first, so it should help me build this quicker. So we'll see how it does on what it can create. So there we go. It looks like I've got a nice graph. It did title it for me already as force versus displacement, and I'm going to add to that title for a spring so that we're very descriptive for a person that's reading it. And then we've got our force is already labeled there, our displacement's there, our point values are given. It did create a nice graph for me. I'm going to go through it now into my series, and I'm going to go into my trend line, add that trend line in there, and then make sure that I get the equation for that. So under label,
I'm going to use my equation. So there's my spring constant now for my for the spring that I have. It's 83.1, and that would be newtons per meter. And it looks like I've got a good graph. So now that I've got my chart, I can go ahead and I'm going to go and do this. I'm going to move it to its own sheet. I always like to work on it in this sense. And if we want, we can then go ahead and copy this chart, okay, and we'll create that then as an image for our document. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to our document. Whoops, this one here. And we're going to insert our graph here. So I'm going to highlight over the words and try just pasting my graph in there. And I'm going to paste it as an unlinked one so it's not connected to it. So it's just going to paste it as an image. So there's my image for my graph, and then I can go ahead and type in my slope. And so that's all we need to do to make sure that we have that taken care of. You can kind of go through now and estimate your area. So you can go back to your graph and try to estimate the value of what this area would represent. And it's looking like a triangle, so it's 1/2 the base times the height. So if I figure out where my height would be, figure out what my base would be, and do half of that, I get my area. The other part of this lab, you can see, would be to answer a couple of other questions. And if you do have any questions as you're doing, just reach out and connect to me.